From the St. Francis Yacht Club in San Francisco, this is the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, hosted by Ron Young.
Welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon, live from the virtual grill room of the St. Francis Yacht Club. We hope that you and your family are safe and sheltering in place just a little bit longer during this long pandemic. We look forward to greeting you back at the Yacht Club as soon as conditions permit. In the meantime, some of us are beginning to bang around the Yacht Club when it's open, sometimes for dinner at night, sometimes for lunch during the day, mostly outdoors. It's wonderful to be able to get together back in our haunt. Now, many of us who've spent some time watching This Old House will find today's program particularly interesting. Our speaker today was born in Utah, and because his dad worked in the oil fields, traveled all around the Western U.S. while he was a youngster, spending some time in Wyoming, and ultimately at age 8 remembers riding ferry boats in Seattle. That's his official aquatic beginning. By age 12, the family lived in Clear Lake, and he remembers being fascinated with little outboard motorboats and saving up 700 buccarinos. There's a couple coin for you when you were a 12-year-old, and buying a little skiff with a 5-horsepower outboard motor in it. That gave him some aquatic freedom zipping around Clear Lake. The family then moved down to Santa Cruz, would take trips up to Tahoe, learned to water ski up there in the early 20s. And in 2003, started sailing with Tim O'Neill, the son of Jack O'Neill, the aquatic equipment supplier in Santa Cruz. And so he sailed on their catamaran as part of the Sea Odyssey program. That's a kind of a cool aquatic consciousness, environmental consciousness program where hundreds of kids get to go out sailing. Then he got a job working in an interesting field, especially when you think about what he's doing these days. He started being part of a company that would put together electromechanical restoration projects. After the World Trade Center was destroyed, one of the insurance companies involved engaged his company to come in and try to help restore different parts of that complex. Later on, when there was an accidental fire on the set of Saturday Night Live, our guest went as a part of the project to kind of restore the electrical mechanical equipment on Saturday Night Live set. That prepares him for essentially buying in 2008 the yacht Aurora. And we're going to hear all about that. So Chris, welcome to the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. Tell us the story about Chris Willson and the Aurora Restoration Project.
Well, good morning, St. Francis. It's kind of a long story. Nobody really decides that they're going to take on a cruise ship as a project. This is something that's kind of a unique thing. At the time, in 2008, I was kind of experimenting, working with a couple of companies and building up some of the first virtual tour stuff. And I was working on a bunch of my own projects, trying to create sample virtual tours for, some different things. So I traveled over to Europe and I did a few virtual tours in the Czech Republic. And I wound up finding a cruise ship on Craigslist of all places. And, my intent wasn't to end up with a cruise ship. It was to do a virtual tour. I traveled to the California Delta for the first time, and I met as a potential buyer. You have to, they're not just going to let anybody on. So I had to act as if I was a potential buyer. When I went on, I decided I was going to, get a pretty well documented virtual tour. And I did. When I actually went home, discovered that the ship was actually of somewhat historical significance. It was the first ship that Germany was allowed to build after World War II. It was the test platform for Mercedes Maybach, diesel, electric, and the list goes on and on. But what I would like to show is some of the images from when I first acquired the ship and, the issues that I had. My first day aboard the Aurora, when it was called the Faithful. And it was a complete disaster. I mean, but if you look at the lines of the vessel, that's the thing that really gets to you. The lines are so unforgettable. So let me take you on a tour. This is 3 of our people that were there to help us offload some of the initial garbage. And you could see that there was quite a bit of garbage on board. If you look at the decks, you could see that they were covered with like a vinyl And that actually destroyed all of the wood that was on the decks. And, knowing nothing about ships, I didn't know what it was actually going to take to repair this. I just knew that I could figure it out. This is actually in Rio Vista. It was tied up next to a ferry called the Coronado Ferry, and it sat there and rotted for quite a while. And I believe if I would not have stepped in, that's probably where she would have wound up, on the bottom of the Delta right there in 2008. This is kind of what the areas looked like. Magnificent staircases, but kind of torn up. They needed so much work, but my eyes were huge and had a lot of energy, so I was very anxious to get involved. And here's another shot of the same thing at a different angle. You can see how bad off it actually was inside. This ship, for probably 20 years, had seen no power, no electricity going through it. So as one of my first tasks, I needed to go through and inspect all the wiring and replace as needed. Boy, when we did light her up, everything all of a sudden turned beautiful. A shot with one of our guys that was kind of doing an inspection on the ship. You could see all the garbage on the decks. The last layer of paint that they put on looked like it was, something that they got at the Home Depot. Every area was completely filled with garbage. I think we took out 17 box van loads of garbage once we actually got it to a dock where we could work on the vessel. You're looking at the back deck of the Aurora in Stockton, California, and this is roughly 5 years ago when we really started digging in. So all the wood on the back deck was completely rotted, and this is kind of the first stages in the rebuild phase. This is what the decks actually looked like when we were tearing it up. So covered with plywood, all of the teak was rotten, and there wasn't much hope for saving any of the wood. After our hard work, probably about a year and a half later, this side of the deck with a lot of new steel on it paid off. So this is painted, awaiting wood if we can acquire it in the future. This is the railings as we would go to work on them. From left to right, you could see that 60 years of deterioration led to heavy sanding and coats of teak oil. So the railings are all going to come back beautiful like they were brand new. And that's amazing for being 60 years old. My father, he's tackling one of the railings now, and he's been kind of slowly working on sections of the railing, and we've gotten quite a bit done. This is about a week into the project. These were our weights because we actually glued down the ceiling tiles. It gives it more of a sleek look. Here's that same area all done with Art Deco, mid-century modern furniture. This is a little bit different vantage point, but you could see some of the furniture, and the couch there is actually off from the Island Princess, which was the Love Boat. This is a short time into the restoration of this hallway, and we're going to just move forward, and I'll show you some pictures of progress. This is some of our crew members checking things out for the hallway. The hallway nearing completion. And now you can see some of the decorative trim and some of the carpet that we put in. Very high-end carpet from Caesar's Palace. This is probably my favorite picture of the hallway complete. This is the deck with some red oxide on it after we did some patching and replacing of the steel in this section. This is some of our people that have helped us over the years, welding and chipping away at this project slowly. And this is part of the furniture that was donated from well-known ship historian Peter Canego. The chairs and the furniture you see behind are from some of the luxury liners that have been scrapped out. This is Wild Dog Productions celebrating their movie that they filmed aboard the Aurora and the Mazepeda called Near Enemies. This is the next movie that they actually filmed called Venom Coast, and it's just about to be released. This was during our screening of Venom Coast, which is kind of it's kind of a jokey slasher movie, kind of goofy, but it's going to be on Amazon Prime soon, so it definitely will be something fun to watch. This is interesting. We had a high-end, one of the California's finest photographers, portrait photographers, bring out some models, and the girl that you see in this model is actually one of Sacramento King's dancers. The guy on the right is a well-known actor. So here she is in the middle of her photo shoot, and this is Shane Moss in the middle of his photo shoot. This group comes on regularly to do modeling shoots, so it's actually attracting the arts very well, the ship is these days. Another shot from one of the movies that was filmed aboard. This is the poster for Agent 11. This is the first of the movies that was actually filmed on board.
So I have so many questions. First of all, give us the dimensions of the ship.
Well, she is 293 feet long, 45 feet wide.
So do you have to dredge part of the delta to move her around? Can she go out from Herman Helens down that slough and go back into the ship's channel then?
Not anymore. A few years ago, there was a pretty good storm and all of the lakes filled. And when they released them all at one time, it almost overflowed the delta, and it kind of built a nice sand berm clear throughout part of this channel that we're at now, and made it so we're kind of stuck here.
By the way, the Aurora has beautiful lines. Do you know who the designer was? And what year was she designed?
She was designed in 1953, and the guy was named Mr. Quast. And I met this guy through a translator that, I guess he was in an old folks home. He was in his mid 90s, but he was very surprised to see that the vessel still existed. And it was nice to at least communicate with him a little bit. And I don't know what came of him, but this was several years ago.
And you mentioned a couple of historic facts about it. Give us some of the unique historic aspects of the ship.
In 1963, she was actually the Spectre headquarters in James Bond From Russia with Love. And that was kind of her big film debut. Since then, she's been in tons of TV shows. I think we found like 4 Baywatches. And let's see, she was the mother of the Love Boat. The lady Geraldine Sanders, who created the TV show The Love Boat, actually wrote her book, Love Boats, that inspired the TV show about her experiences on this vessel.
So did the engines work when you bought the boat?
No, the engines did not work, but we inspected them. As of recently, we actually inspected them as well. And the ones that are down there look inside like they're brand new. I think that they could come back okay, but it doesn't make any sense to get the propulsion working until we actually pull this boat out of the water and redo some of the bottom work.
So when you first got her, was she leaking? How badly was she leaking? And is there any difference, or is her steel hull hasn't leaked much? Give us the word.
When I first found it, it did have one leak, and it wasn't due necessarily to rot. It was due to somebody welding something in one of the double bottoms, and it had like a water fountain leak that would fill up an entire lower area in a matter of like 4 or 5 days. So I went down below. I did a lot of investigation on how I would fix that, and I actually crawled into the bilge, and I spent quite a bit of time getting that fixed, and then I dried it out and cleaned everything. And one day when she comes out of the water, that'll be one of the focuses is fixing that the correct way.
So how many hours have you put into the restoration of this project? It seems like a massive number of people. And give us the organization of your staff to do it. Who's working on the project?
Well, if it's complex projects, then we will pay some people to do certain things. But we do take on a lot of volunteers, and a lot of our volunteer staff are kind of Silicon Valley. I hesitate to say royalty, but CEOs of a lot of major companies, and some of the staff from a lot of the major companies come out here in July-ish and help out for quite a while. And the rest of the year, we generally, we don't use many locals from around here. We've had some problems, but we do have some of our best volunteers are actually from this area.
And do you provide them with a place to stay because you're kind of remote up there in Stockton, or do you let them stay on the boat? In other words, while they're working, if they come to work for 4 or 5 days, do they live on the boat?
We have let them live on the boat in the past, but I acquired a 100-foot tugboat with beautiful berthing in it, and it's a fully operational vessel. So we kind of allow them to stay on there because everything is running in perfect working order.
So if somebody wanted to come and volunteer and help out and work on part of the restoration, give us the contact information.
Generally, people have gone through Facebook in order to contact me through our group. It's called the Aurora Restoration Project, and it's like it's a bunch of ship experts, but a lot of people that are fans of the ship. That's one way that they've contacted me, and the other way that you could contact me is directly through our email at aurorayacht@gmail.com.
Spell Aurora Yacht for people who want to contact you. Aurora spelled.
Okay, Aurora Yacht is spelled AURORAYACHT@gmail.com.
Great. So now, how many cabins do you expect to have when you're done, and what will be the capacity of the yacht when you're finished with the restoration?
In between 70 and 80 cabins. Some of them we would like to make a little larger. So I think we're going to knock out a wall and actually completely redo them. But we're working our way down from the A deck to the B deck to the C deck on the cabins. And one of our future plans is we're going to adopt out or let people sponsor certain cabins or certain areas of the vessel to be redone. But we're going to keep it in the mid-century style. So nothing is going to be modern aboard.
So ultimately, you said 70 cabins, but I heard you mention earlier 1,600 people back when it was in use in Germany. Was that because they didn't stay overnight? They would basically just get transported across the water to the vacation site? How do you get 1,600 people on it?
When she was first built, she was actually built as a ferry, so there were no cabins. And in 1960, it was converted at the Blumenbos shipyard. So they added 130 cabins. Yeah, that's why she carried 1,600 passengers then. And as a cruise ship, she was built for roughly 280 to 300 passengers.
Now, are you doing this under the umbrella of a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, or what's the corporate structure of the Aurora project?
We have taken no donations. So we do have it under the umbrella of an LLC, of course. But eventually, I think we will be setting up a 501c3, and we will, allow the public to get involved, and we encourage them to kind of, follow the whole project and watch what we're doing, because we're kind of an open book, and we would love to share this with the world.
Talk to us about staff size of volunteers and seasonally how that varies.
COVID has really thrown things off track, of course, but let's say right now we have 12 ex-Navy guys working on the decks as we speak, and they're due to leave tomorrow, but they've flown in from all over the country. But they kind of host a Navy reunion where they come out and they work and work and work. So they've been doing this for a few years. And then in the next couple of days, we have somebody that has a cooking TV show that has offered to loan his services because he has a day job that does custom ceilings. So he's going to come in and redo the pilot house and not the whole pilot house, just the ceiling in the pilot house. And this is not really payment. He's just doing it as a favor because I'm allowing him to use the vessel for his cooking show.
And so who's putting together all of these movie site projects? Do you have a salesperson or a biz dev person who's making phone calls in the movie industry saying, want to use this Aurora? Or are you doing that? Who's putting that together?
No, they kind of found us. One of our volunteers that lives here locally, he is a pretty established artist, and he decided he was going to go a different route and do some acting. And he started off kind of small doing car TV commercials, but then he moved into larger movies and pretty soon into making his own movies. And he kind of helped us launch, but I'm very good at networking. So I paid attention as this was going on, and made a lot of the connections myself. But I am the management, so I find these people, and really they find us. It's not hard for them to find a 1950s cruise ship.
So where are you buying the furniture that you're putting on it? And are you trying to do period pieces of the furniture? You mentioned getting furniture from Las Vegas.
Okay, so the carpeting, we actually got it from the same people that manufacture the carpeting for Caesar's Palace and a lot of the other casinos in Vegas. The pattern we got was one of the patterns that didn't get used in Caesar's Palace. So we get the exclusive on it on the Aurora, and I think we're like $40,000 into that carpet, but it's like 80% cotton and it's thick, and you can use it for a long time because it's built for traction. But the furniture, however, a lot of it is off the Island Princess and some other cruise ships that actually were dismantled in Alang, India. Ship historian Peter Canego, which is a pretty famous guy, as his dad was an actor back in the classic movies, a very well-known actor named Peter Coe, and his mother was a kind of a supermodel back in the day.
Back in which day? Back in the 60s, back in the 80s?
40s and 50s. Yeah, and it's very interesting to look him up because you will know who he is once you look him up. He's been in a lot of stuff. But Peter Canego is probably the world's most well-known ship historian, and he does documentary videos, but he's been attached to this project, and he's been a very good friend for quite a long time. And he donated giant trailer loads of the furniture that came off from the Island Princess. And the rest of the furniture, we have tables that were from the original Star Trek series, right? And that's what graces the lounge right now. And, just various bits of historic furniture, but we are definitely using period. You will find no new furniture on board.
How many hours to date? I keep hunting for this question. Have you calculated how many hours to date in the restoration project?
Let's just say since 2008, probably, and I've taken some days off, of course. I take little vacations here and there, but I'm usually on it 8 to 12 hours every single day. I would say probably 250 days a year. So quite a bit of time, whatever that adds up to.
Okay, so that's 2,000 hours a year times 15 years or something like that. 14 years. Okay. 2,000.
Yeah.
So that's more than 20,000 hours of your side. What's the average number of people who are working in an average day at restoring Aurora?
Well, thank goodness. If you come by tomorrow, there will be nobody here. But today we have about 14 people here working on various parts of the deck today.
Why nobody tomorrow? Why is it when some days we have no staff? What's that all about? No volunteers.
This Navy group flew out for the course of about a week. So they've been here for a week working on things. And tomorrow is the end of their reunion, so they will fly home. And then I'll have a couple of days off before the guy comes in to do the sealing in the captain's quarters, and he'll bring his. After that, sometimes it's just me working on board, and sometimes it gets really busy. But with the COVID thing going on, we've been very slow about how many volunteers we actually have. And for about a year and a few months, it was just me.
What do you think out-of-pocket total restoration costs are to date?
Over the last couple of years, roughly $20,000 a month in buying materials and anything that I need to complete the jobs that I do.
Okay. When do you expect it to be done? Give us a view going forward.
Much like the Queen Mary, this boat will never be done. But over the last few years, we've actually picked up pace faster than we ever have, because anytime you get a ship like this, it's not quite that easy going. You have politics, and there's a lot of politics and issues behind everything. But over the last 3 years, we've gotten so much done, And I could see that if we keep moving at the pace that we're moving, in 3 or 4 years, we'll actually be able to open to the public and allow them on board to actually take tours and schedule events and things like that. Kind of like the Queen Mary, only smaller.
Now you're in a very remote location. You're at the end of 8 Mile Road off of Highway 5 north of Stockton. You're near a little resort called Herman and Helen's, and between Herman and Helen's and St. Francis Yacht Club's Tinsley Island. That's far and remote, and yet in order to accommodate the kind of tourist traffic you could potentially draw, where might you move this, or is it your plan to keep it right there at the end of 8 Mile Road?
That's a good question. We've actually considered both scenarios. As we sit right now, we are probably the largest unofficial attraction in the entire Delta. Every single day, there's got to be 20 or 30 people or more sometimes that stand out in front of the ship trying to get the tour, taking pictures. You'll see people parking their cars on the street, snapping pictures with the ship in the background, car dealerships bringing all their cars out here to get the ship in the background, people doing their wedding photos. It goes on and on. So almost any moment that I look out the window, people are, trying to get a hold of somebody on board to get a tour or some information about the ship.
So under that scenario, you're saying maybe you become a destination tourist attraction in the Delta and people come and see you where you are. But if you were to move her, where might you move her to get more tourist traction? I mean, someplace on the city front, south of the Bay Bridge where the docking is inexpensive, or is that just out of the question? Or Richmond or Alameda? Have you thought much about other locations?
Well, our first trial was in San Francisco. We wanted to put her out there, but San Francisco had their reasons. We wound up coming into the Delta, but I see more advantages in the Delta. So I think if we were going to move someplace, it would be one of the small cities on the Delta where we could actually make a good dent to help them in their local economy. So that's what I'd like to do. One of the small cities here in the Delta.
Like Rio Vista, which is right on the Sacramento River, and it's got bridge access and highway access. Or give us a city or two, a couple candidates.
I believe there's a couple spots that I looked at that would work out great, but I love Rio Vista. That's one of the first locations that we actually occupied. Looking further, we came kind of close to negotiating something out with Ileton. And I think we could have helped Ileton out a lot, but I think that would have been something that would have, moved us backwards a little bit, So I don't think Ileton's got the turn.
What about Vallejo or Benicia, where you're closer to Bay Area traffic and people on their way up to Napa Valley, for instance? What about one of those?
I like Vallejo a lot, but I'm kind of stuck on keeping the vessel in fresh water. Rio Vista would be a great location. Even where she sits now is a terrific location, but it is kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And I think another location that I thought of was Sassoon City, next to where the lighthouse is at. I couldn't think of a better area than that for this ship. It would totally grace that city. But it's something that we'll have to consider during the restoration. The further she comes along, the more she'll be invited to various locations.
Hey, so Chris Willson, the what do we call you? The proprietor? You wouldn't want the time the CEO of the Project Aurora. What do you call yourself relative to the Project Aurora? You're the owner. What else do you say?
I'm just kind of the face behind the ship, I think. I mean, the ship is its own face. It's popular all on its own without me. But I'm just here to take it to the next level and hopefully keep it around for a few more generations.
So, as you may know, I own an 84-year-old antique racing boat, and just to keep her looking pretty takes thoughtful folks, kind of a little mini ecosystem that sail and race the boat and also do projects on it. We did a 12-day project recently, and there were 356 volunteer hours by the Friends of Youngster on this project. Separate from checks I wrote, these are just pure volunteer, smart, savvy people who handle woodworking and the like. And when I think about the scale of your project, it's like unbelievable. This is this incredible 293-foot long yacht slash ship. You're going to have 100,000 volunteer hours. I can't see how you wouldn't when this project's all done. What does this look like 5 years out?
Well, let's see. Some of the current events that we have going on that I can't really discuss, I believe will help us slingshot this thing forward to, get quite a bit done in a short amount of time. So I would say bringing this thing back to seaworthiness is probably not what I want to do, but I think making her a shoreside attraction that actually will operate and get from point A to point B makes complete and total sense to do. But bringing her back as a passenger vessel, that would be cost prohibitive. Of course, one of them is going to cost $5 million, and one of them is going to cost $20 million. We'll kind of take the middle ground and actually get her operational, but make her a shoreside attraction. So I would say in 5 years, that's where we're going to be. We're going to have this thing looking brand new, everything that the eyes can see on board, including the cabins. I think that they will be all finished, but she will not be a passenger vessel.
So people will come and stay like the equivalent of a big bed and breakfast, but with character. What people come and stay for a night or two, or will it be parties? Tell us how people who come to it what'll they be doing? What's their usage model?
Well, I believe it could be a bed and breakfast, and it would be probably booked out pretty well for that. And I think to sell fractional ownerships of the vessel in order to pay for her restoration and actually make her a coastal cruiser on a private capacity. So, people would either buy a cabin or buy a fraction of a cabin. Let's say we'd have 3 or 4 owners of each individual cabin. And then we could start cruising it. There's only 3 classic liners left in the United States, and this is the only one that has the potential to survive the long run. So we really want to take care of it and make the most business conscious decisions for her.
Right. So the same way somebody buys a cabin in Puerto Vallarta and they have a fractional ownership in that, they can go down and stay in it, and they can lease it out in the meantime for other activities. That's the business model. So that's what I was going to get to next. What's the business model underlying the restoration project?
What would it do to make its own money in order to progress its restoration?
Yeah,
that's all on me. So this is where the public can help join in, things like that, because until you actually get the vessel to a point where she can make money, it just costs money. So that's where the hole in the water that you pour your money into comes from. But I couldn't be more happy to pour my money into this project to move it forward, because once it's done, it's going to be a one of a kind. There's nothing else like it on the face of the planet today. And, my opinion is we need to keep this and a lot of the other historic vessels, up and going, for future generations.
Your back of the napkin business model is to continue to review business scenarios, but ultimately to make it cash positive, self-sustaining. So Chris Willson, visionary and restorer of the yacht Aurora, thanks so much for sharing your time with the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon. We've enjoyed your company.
Thank you for having me.
And with that, the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon is adjourned.
This has been a presentation of the Wednesday Yachting Luncheon.